In the quiet town of Ikom lived a young girl named Ine. Her world changed overnight when her parents died in a car crash. At just 10 years old, she was orphaned and sent to live with Madame Ibong, her mother's distant cousin. It was supposed to be a place of comfort. Instead, it became a prison. From the first day, Ine was not welcomed. Madame Ibong's eyes held no warmth. Her house smelled of pepper soup and kerosene, but there was no kindness in its wall. Ine became the help, sweeping, scrubbing, cooking, and fetching water. Every morning before the sun rose, she was sent to the stream with a heavy bucket and strict orders. Madame Ibong's daughter Fola was only a year older than Ine, but acted like a queen. She flaunted her lace dresses and patent shoes, mocking Ine's worn-out slippers. Fola never lifted a finger. She would eat, drop her plate, and say, "Ine, clean this." One evening, Ine, exhausted and dizzy from hunger, accidentally dropped the plate while serving dinner. It shattered into pieces. Fola, enraged, slapped her hard. "You are nothing but a useless orphan. Eat your food from the floor like a goat," she hissed. Trembling, Ine knelt and picked her eba and watery okra soup with her hands. The sand from the cement floor mixed with the food, but she forced herself to swallow. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't speak. In that moment, something shifted inside her. A quiet, burning fire. Ine's days were long and her nights longer. After chores, she would sleep on a thin mat in the corridor outside the kitchen, often next to the family's barking dog. When it rained, the leaks in the roof dripped on her. Sometimes she woke up shivering in soaked clothes. She often ate leftovers if any were left. Madame Ibong claimed there wasn't enough food. "Why should I feed someone else's child before mine?" she would say. Fola would taunt her by chewing loudly and leaving bones on her plate. But Henny had something stronger than comfort. She had a sharp mind and an unbreakable spirit. Every evening, after sweeping and washing clothes, she would sit by the dim lantern and try to read old textbooks from the neighborhood dump. Her fingers traced every word with hunger, not for food but for knowledge. Sometimes she cried into her pillow made from folded rags, but never loud enough to be heard. She knew no one would care. Her only solace was the hope that one day this would end. At school, Ine was quiet, always sitting at the back. Her uniform was faded, patched many times. Her shoes had holes. Yet she answered questions with precision and wrote essays that stunned her teachers. Mr. Bassi, the English teacher, noticed her. One day he called her after class. "You are special, Ine. Who helps you with your studies?" "No one, sir. I read at home," she said, avoiding eye contact. He nodded. "Keep it up. I want to help you." He gave her extra books, paid her exam fees quietly, and encouraged her to apply for the state scholarship. It was her first spark of hope. The scholarship exam came. On the morning of the test, Madame Ebong almost stopped Ine from going. "Who will cook before I come back from market?" "You think book will feed you?" Ine begged. She promised to cook and clean later. After much shouting, Madame Ibong waved her off. "Go and fail quickly." Ine ran barefoot to the exam center, arriving breathless and sweaty. But she passed. Not just passed, she topped the list. A scholarship was awarded, a full ride to a girls' boarding school in Calabar, her first step away from misery. Calabar was like another planet. Paved roads, electricity, running water. The school had bunk beds, clean uniforms, and 3 meals a day. For the first time in years, Ine ate until she was full. She wept the first night, not from pain but from peace. But adjusting wasn't easy. Her English was different, her accent thick. Some girls mocked her. "Bush girl," they whispered. But Ini didn't care. She had survived wars. She studied harder than anyone else, stayed in the library during breaks, and asked questions without shame. Despite her progress, Ini had nightmares. She would wake up sweating, reliving the moment she ate from the floor. The shame clung to her like a second skin. Sometimes she feared she wasn't truly free, that if she failed, she would be sent back. So she worked harder. When other girls slept, she studied. She wrote her goals on the wall beside her bed. Ini rarely wrote to Madame Ebong. The few letters she sent were cold and formal. She never mentioned her awards or scholarship. She feared that even her happiness could be mocked. She poured her feelings into journals. She wrote about the hunger, the insults, the night under the leaking roof, and she wrote about her dreams of owning land, of building homes, and of creating safe spaces. One day she wrote, "One day I will buy the house and they will call me Madam." With another scholarship, Ini gained admission to the University of Uyo, Business Administration. But now life got harder again. She had no family support. She rented a small room beside a noisy workshop. The ceiling leaked and the toilet barely worked. She sold sachet water and tutored kids to survive. Sometimes she ate only garri and groundnuts for days. But she never missed class. She was the girl with fire in her eyes and wounds in her soul. Her classmates dressed in fine clothes, carried iPhones and took cabs. Ini walked everywhere. Some laughed, others pitied her, but no one knew her story. In her final year, a lecturer announced a business pitch competition. Ini stayed up for days designing a plan. Affordable student hostels, safe and neat. She called it Home First. She used real-life stories, including hers. She talked about broken toilets, landlords who shouted, and students who suffered. She presented with tears in her eyes, and she won. A businesswoman approached her. "Your story is your power," she said. "Let's build this together." With the seed fund, Ini bought a small plot near the university. She supervised every step. She bargained with cement sellers, watched masons like a hawk, and studied real estate online. The first 10-room hostel was completed a year later. It was clean, secure, and affordable. Her tenants loved her. She reinvested every kobo. She lived in a tiny room behind the building. She ate simple food and avoided luxury. Her eyes were on the long game. A year after opening her first hostel, Ini received a letter with an unfamiliar handwriting. It was from a lawyer. Madame Ibong's property, the same house where she had suffered for years, was being put for sale. Debt had swallowed the family's finances. Fola had dropped out of the university and Madame Ibong had fallen ill. Ini stared at the letter for a long time. Her past came flooding back. The floor, the shame, the hunger. She thought of ignoring it, but then she remembered her vow. "One day I will buy that house." She called the lawyer the next day. The house looked smaller than she remembered. The walls were chipped. The compound was overgrown. Ini stood at the gate in a smart suit and heels. Her driver waited quietly behind her. When Fola opened the door and saw Ini, she froze. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Ini!" "It's Madame Ini now," she said calmly. "I'm here to inspect my new property." Fola's mouth opened, then closed. She stepped aside. Inside, the air smelled damp. Madame Ibong was lying on a sofa, coughing. She looked up. Her eyes held no fire now, just shock. "You bought the house?" "Yes, I own it now." She didn't smile. She just looked around at the place that once broke her and stood tall. Ini allowed them to stay temporarily. She gave them 3 months to relocate. She even offered to help them move if they wished. Fola broke down one evening. "Ini, I'm sorry. We were cruel to you. I was just a child. I didn't know better." "I was a child too," Ini replied. And I knew better than to treat anyone the way you did." There was no malice in her voice, just truth. Despite her kindness, whispers spread. Some town people said she was being vindictive. Others praised her, but Ini didn't care. One day, a neighbor approached her. "Do you feel good now that you've taken revenge?" Ini smiled gently. "This is not revenge. This is restoration." She didn't evict them with police. She didn't shame them in public. But she didn't erase the past either. Using her growing income, Ini launched the Home First Girls Foundation, a safe home and scholarship scheme for girls who had been abandoned or abused. Each girl received mentorship, education, therapy, and above all, dignity. Ini shared her story with them, not for pity, but to show them what was possible. "Your past doesn't have to be your prison," she said often. "Use it as a platform." One day at a real estate conference, Ini spotted a familiar face in the crowd, Mr. Bassi, older now with graying hair. When she introduced herself, his eyes filled with tears. "Ini, little Ini from Ikom?" "Not so little anymore," she laughed. They embraced. She offered him a consultancy role in her business, and he accepted with pride. Her success had come full circle. The media began to pick up her story. Articles were written. From orphan to mogul, they called her. Interviews followed, but she remained grounded. Fola found work as a hairdresser. She stayed humble, often sending messages of thanks to Ini. Though they were never friends again, they made peace. One day, Fola came to the foundation and asked to volunteer. Ini agreed. The girls didn't know their history, but they saw two women, one teaching, one learning. When Madam Ibong died, Ini paid for the funeral. She didn't cry, she didn't speak at the service, but she attended, dressed simply, sitting at the back. Later, she stood by the grave and whispered, "I forgive you." Then she walked away, not with bitterness, but with freedom. Years passed, Ini became one of the most respected real estate developers in southern Nigeria. She owned hostels, houses, and even shopping complexes. But she never forgot the girl who ate from the floor. Every building she opened bore a plaque for Ini and every child who was once made to feel small. People called her Madam Ini. Girls called her mentor, but she called herself something else, a survivor. She stood on her land, on her terms, and she smiled, because the floor had once held her down, but now she owned it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Do well to like this video, share to your loved ones, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel, why not? Hit the subscribe button. Thank you. And expect more intriguing and exciting stories. Thank you. Bye.